Okay, let's finish this up. So let's see, we've got just the denoise node. Again, this is just the way you enable this with the extra passes, the normal and albedo pass, is you just go to this tab, view layer properties, enable denoising data, and then you just shift A, search for denoise, and then it's right there. Just drop it in, you'll get the extra passes. Make sure you enable that setting before you render, otherwise it won't work. And then that's just running into a lens distortion. So this is set to 0.0055. You can set it to whatever you want. That's just the default that I have it on in my default file. Let's just take this and bring it into Photoshop and just see how that changes things. And it'll maybe be done, might not be, but let's just try. So image, save, and let's just call this, this is process 5 for me, but in the final thing, it might not be the 5th one, it might be the 3rd one. So ignore the name and save it. And then the other thing I want here is the mist pass as well. So I think I mentioned this in the other one, but instead of running that straight out, the lens distortion actually warps the image slightly and bends all the edges just a little bit. So I'm going to run the mist pass into the lens distortion so that the same distortion gets applied to this essentially mask here. Sometimes this comes out noisy, so you can denoise it if you want. In this case, it looks fine, so I'm not going to. And then this will just give us some nice depth to work with. If you wanted, you could actually color ramp that here as well, but I'll just do that in Photoshop. So let's save that. I don't think the settings matter on this one, so let's call it whatever the name is. Add mist to the end. Save it. Okay, so let's open up Photoshop. I'm going to close Blender. Yeah, we'll just close that, save it. So I have this right here. This is the thing I just saved, this image. And I can just take that from the File Explorer and just drag and drop it into Photoshop like this. Wonderful. Something that happens sometimes that's a bit weird is you get some transparency. I don't know why you get that. It might be if you save it as RGBA. A is the alpha channel, so that might mess with it. Anyways, if you just duplicate the background and then merge that with the original background, that'll get rid of any weird transparency issues. Okay, and I'm going to leave it on, let's go neutral gray for now. So not super bright, not super dark. So the first thing I want to do is, you could add a glare node for this, or you could use what's called the Orton effect. Basically just adding a blur and then changing the blending mode to screen. So you duplicate the background, blur it, and then overlay that on top of the original one with either the overlay blend mode or the screen or add blend mode. So I'll show you how to do that. So I've gone over this in the other videos too, but I'll just show you again, just to keep it all consistent. So duplicate the background layer. The way you do that is you can just press Ctrl J or just drag it to the plus down here. And let's go up to filter, blur, and I don't know how you say this, but this one right here, Gaussian, doesn't really matter. Click it. And then some amount of blur that looks roughly somewhat like this-ish is going to be okay. And then, yeah, if we just change this to screen, basically screen blending mode is going to get rid of all the dark parts of this image and just leave the white parts over top. So that's really nice for just getting that glow in all the areas that are already bright and would be kind of glowing. But you can take this actually a step further if you double click the layer and then take this slider right here. This is the blend if slider. So you can see, basically if I drag up the left side of this, it'll only use the values between this handle and the handle on the left. So it'll only be visible in this range from this handle here over to here. So you can see if I drag this down, it'll start getting rid of areas that are brighter than this gray value on this slider here. And same with the darks. Like if you drag this up, it'll start cutting off values below that point. So if you hold Alt and click this handle here, that will smooth out the transition that it gives you where it cuts off that dark point or bright point. So the easiest thing to do is just split the handle by clicking, like hold Alt and then click on it and drag one of those out and then just pull it up to wherever looks good. So somewhere around there. And basically what that's doing is it's saying, okay, only values between here and here are going to be visible, but fade it out all the way to here, if that makes sense. So it's a bit tricky to explain, but once you actually move these around and see how it works, it'll make a lot more sense. And you just kind of have to play with it, and you'll see what it does. If you don't want to deal with that, you can just add a mask and just brush it in where it looks bright. You could do that too. Or even just turn the opacity way down and just keep the effect subtle, and then don't even worry about it at all. It's really not adding that much, so I wouldn't say it's a huge deal. But anyways, I think it's just a quick way to add some glow in the brighter parts, kind of like the glare node would. Let's take the fill down a little bit, or opacity. In this case, fill and opacity are going to do the same thing. So just drag that down to something that isn't 100. I'm just clicking on enough just to see if I'm pushing it too far or not. I think that's a good amount right there. Subtle, but gets the job done. Let's do a curves next. So we're just going to do some dodging and burning. Let's just do the, I believe, burn layer first. So drag the curve down. Again, I should have explained what I'm doing. This is the button down here, this half circle, which is all the adjustment layers. So I'm just choosing the one that's called curves. Instead of going to image adjustments curves, I like to do that in a layer so it's non-destructive and you can go back anytime and tweak it and undo it without worrying about running out of undos or messing it up. So curves adjustment layer, and basically the way this works is when you adjust this effect will be applied to anything below this layer. So let's just drag this, make sure it's on the top layer so it's not, it's only affecting, it's affecting both layers below it. I'm going to drag it down, and then I'm getting it to a point where it seems like the darkest parts of my image should be this dark, but I'm not worrying too much about anything else. And then what I can do is just invert the mask. So just click on this white square on this curves layer, just hit Control I to invert that. And now take the brush, just press B for brush, or just click it over here. Bracket, open bracket to scale down, close bracket to scale up, the left and right bracket essentially. So just paint that in where it seems like it should be darker. So I'm just going to go around here. I'm going to lower the flow down. So I don't like to have it at 100 because that means if you go over the same area, it just won't get any darker. It'll be at the maximum darkness that you apply there. But if you keep it at 25, 30, when you come back around the same area again, it'll keep getting darker because it'll only apply at 25%. And then when you go over it again, it'll get even darker, and again, it'll get even darker. If you use opacity, you don't get that effect. It'll be lower, the opacity will actually be lower, but if you circle around the same area, it won't get any darker until you release the mouse and then click again. Whereas with the flow, you can hold down the mouse and just drag it over again and again and again. It'll get darker and darker and darker without having to click or release the mouse and click again. Okay, so doesn't matter that much, just extra clicking. So I'm just painting in where it seems like it should be dark. That's my strategy here. So around the edges, always looks good. Maybe some areas that are just really bright, just tone that down a little bit, like here, slightly. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the opposite effect. So let's do another curves adjustment layer. So click the adjustment layers, curves, and this time let's bring it up a little bit, like this. Now I'm not worrying too much about if it's getting overexposed in certain areas or any of that. I'm just turning it up pretty bright so that I can invert this mask. Again, Control I. And then I can brush this in wherever it seems like it should be brighter. So I don't need to worry about if it's overexposed because it's only going to be visible in certain areas. And I don't have to, overexpose this if I don't want to. So let's just brush it in. It seems like here should be a little brighter. Around the silhouette of me could be a little brighter. And I don't think it needs that much else. Your attention is already, it seems like kind of naturally drifting towards the middle of this. So I'm not too worried about making this super bright. It's already going to be fine. Just maybe taking up some areas here and there that would look cool if they were a bit brighter, just some little highlights maybe here and there might be nice. And maybe up here too, just kind of where the light is coming from. It's always nice. Yeah, I think that's going to be a good amount there. So let's just stop with that. So not a huge effect, but look what happens when you take that, when you take off both of them together. So when I take off the dodging and the burning layer, so the brightening and darkening layer together, now it makes a big difference, right? So it's like, individually it's not too big of a difference, but when you combine them together, it just makes the edges, or like the parts that you don't want as visible, slightly darker, and then the parts that you want to bring more attention to, slightly brighter. That together really, just makes it a lot more pleasing to look at, and it just looks good. It's just good. Yeah. Look at that. So, before, after, really easy way to just instantly make things look a bit better. Just don't go too extreme with these. It's, if you see the brush marks and you can tell that somebody just brushed it in Photoshop, kind of ruins the effect. So just keep it subtle. It doesn't need to be that extreme. You can see like that's all I'm doing and it's making a big difference. So just be careful with it. All right, let's move to particles maybe. So I'll just pull from the particles pack. You'll have access to this too. It was a free pack I gave away a while ago, but it hasn't been up for a while, but I'll just include it here. So number 2, I only ever pretty much use particles number 2. It's just the best one, but feel free to look through these, and if there's one you like more, use that one, but I just prefer this one. And nobody can really tell if you use the same particle image in the same or in different renders over and over again, so who cares? We'll just flip it around so it's not the exact same. Maybe flip horizontal, hit OK. And then let's just throw that onto the screen blending mode. So again, it'll just get rid of the dark areas. The background's black, so that makes it really easy to blend it in here. And then I might use the mist pass to just mask this out, which I actually forgot to drop in here. So let me just grab that really quick. So we'll just go back here, take the mist pass, this one, just drag and drop that in here. Cool. And then to select only the light parts of this to use it as a mask, what you can do is just head over to this tab, channels. And basically, if you just control click on any one of these, I don't think I need to explain, it doesn't really matter why this works. It's a quick way to select the white pixels and leave the black ones. Control click on any one of these thumbnails, doesn't matter which one. I'll just do RGB. That will select, it'll make a selection based off of how bright each pixel is. So, that's a perfect way to select, make a mask of this, So we can uncheck that, and let's actually make a mask of this without this particle there first. I'll just create a new layer with that selection active. So just hit the plus here. And then let's just choose a color. I'm going to use the eyedropper. Just press I on the keyboard for the eyedropper and just pick some kind of green color in here, just some background color. I might make that color just a bit brighter. X to switch that to the background color, and then Control Delete to fill it in. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to create a mask before I do that. So let's actually make a mask. So add layer mask. It's this button right here. The, circle in a square button. Click that. And now the mask is on this empty layer, and I'll fill that empty layer with green. And that way I can actually do an adjustment to the mask itself after it's applied, or after it's filled in here. Whereas if I just filled the layer without a mask, just based on that selection, I wouldn't be able to dial in exactly where I want it to cut off. So let's do this with the mask selected. So don't select the layer like this. See how there's a white box around the color of this layer? I actually want to click on the mask itself, this one, the thing that's linked to this attached thing right here, the black and white image. So click like this one, not this, but this one. And I want to do an adjustment to that layer so I can dial in exactly the range that this mask is applying to this layer. So let's go up to Image, Adjustments, Curves. And I don't think there's a way to use an adjustment layer on a mask like this. So I have to just do it, destructively with a curves adjustment, but not a huge deal. We'll just do it anyways. So that brings up this, and this is basically a color ramp that you can use to dial in the exact range of where you want this mask to be applied. So if you don't want to deal with this layer mask and curves adjustment layer, or curves adjustment rather, you can actually just drop a color ramp in Blender, like where you have your render layers running into your output. Just drop a color ramp in where you're outputting the mist pass. Just drop it in there, and then you can do this exact same thing just with a color ramp in Blender if you don't want to do this here. But here's how I'm doing it. So, okay, so there's two things I need to do. One, I need a mask for those particles. So this one can be a bit more harsh. So I think that'll be fine like that. And then I can actually just control click on that mask to select what that mask is doing. So it'll just select what the mask is essentially masking. And I'll just hide that layer and then bring the particles back and then just click the mask button again. And that basically just duplicates the mask onto this layer. And so that just means it just won't display the particles in the immediate foreground where there's like trees and stuff right next to the camera. It'll just kind of keep it in the background, which, is just a bit nicer. And I might scale it down. So since we can't even see it on the sides, I might just scale that in a little bit, pull it up, maybe a little wider. And there we go. That should be good. Since it's not visible on the sides anyway, so I can just scale it in a little bit. And then let's just do this. Let's take the fill. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I clicked this button in the middle. This chain or like this link button in the middle means that if I transform this layer, it'll actually transform the mask with it and it'll mess up the positioning of the mask. But if you unlink it from the mask, you can do whatever transforms you want and the mask will be in the exact same position that it was when you first put it on. Okay, and that's Control T, by the way, just to hit transform. Okay, let's just bring this layer back on. And I think I'm gonna use this and actually brush it in as a mist pass. But it might be cool to do multiple iterations of this at different depths. So I'm gonna hit Control J on this mist or on this smoke effect layer, whatever this is. And I'm gonna hide the second one. I'll deal with that in a minute. But for now, I'm gonna take this and then go up to image adjustments. Let's go to curves again. And then I'm just gonna dial in a bit of a further depth because I want the subject here, me, to be a bit more separated from the background. And I can do that by just, adding this like layer of smoke or fog or whatever this is so that it's really easy to just see that silhouette there. And let's hit OK on that. So now we have two. So we have this one and we have this one here. So this one I think will be nicer to paint in at like this depth, a bit closer to the camera. And then we'll paint this one in right behind me just to get that nice silhouette there. So let's do this one at a time. So just apply this. So right click the mask, apply. The reason I'm applying it is because I want to actually make a new mask to brush it in where I want. So I'm going to hit the mask again. Let's invert the mask. Just make sure the mask is selected. So click the white box, Control I to invert, brush, and you could just paint it in like this if you wanted, But I think it works a bit better to use my smoke brush. You could just download whatever nice cloud or smoke brush you want, but I will remember to leave a link to this brush so that you can just download this and then get a nice, easy smoky effect like this. So this is what this brush looks like. I'll show you. If I turn it up, it just gives us this kind of thing versus just a soft gradient like the other one. So I'm going to turn the flow down to, 20, 30, 40, something like that. And then just kind of brush it in like this. And I'm just keeping it low to the ground, just a nice kind of ground fog or just something to separate this layer or this like point of space from the background a little bit more. Just kind of gives it a more nice like layered effect. Just looks nice. So let's take it down. It's a bit much. So keeping it subtle is always good. So 50% maybe. Just a nice little, it just adds a bit more depth to things. And then let's do the same thing on this one, but just brush it in a little bit closer to the camera. So same thing, let's apply that mask and then I create a new mask so that I can brush it in exactly where I want. Invert that mask, make sure it's selected and you don't have the layer selected. And then just switch it to white. X is switch between foreground and background. And then we'll just brush it in at this level here. So I don't want it to go too far. I don't want it to overlap too much with that other mask. I just want to keep it really nice and subtle just to, again, add that like nice depth or like layered kind of effect to things. If I go too extreme with that, it's just going to look weird and stupid. So just keeping that as subtle as I can while still being able to see it. And let's just take a look what that looks like. I might get rid of it on the very edge here. I don't think it belongs there. And so yeah, it's subtle, but you know, the subtle things add up, right? So especially when they get crushed and slammed in the camera raw filter, when I bring out the clarity and contrast and all that, you'll really start to probably see all those details just pop a bit more. So let's just take this is a bit much here, and up here is just oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. This one. So I'm just using black to erase some of those areas, and yeah, that looks pretty good. I might push this back a little bit more so it's a little less smoky. And I'm gonna put this one above it because it just makes more sense, I think. This one's here. So yeah, that is looking pretty good. Pretty subtle effect, but here's what we started with, and here's all the edits all together that we've done so far. So pretty big difference, but one by one, it's not too big of a difference, but these things do add up. Okay, let me save this because I've not saved it at all. Process 5, edit. Okay, sure. Now let's click the top layer, and I don't think I'm gonna do any lens dirt. I don't think I need it in this one. But what I want to do now is bring this through the camera raw filter. So I've showed this a few times here, but I'll just do it again just to be extra clear, just so you can see exactly how I do this. So the way you do this is the camera raw filter is a filter that we can only apply to one single layer, but I want to apply it to everything that we've done so far all at once and just kind of compress and slam it all together. So the way you do that is you have to take all the layers that we've created here, duplicate them, and merge them all together into one new layer that I can put that filter onto, the camera raw filter. And so the easiest shortcut for that is just don't select everything, select the top layer, press Control, Alt, Shift, E, all at the same time. So Control, Alt, Shift, E with the top layer selected, duplicates and merges all layers together into one layer. So you can see if I just move this layer around, it's just everything we've done just smashed into one single layer. So it's all flattened together into one image. And so the reason, again, is just because you can only apply this effect to one layer. So we have to, combine it all into one layer. But I don't want to actually affect all the other layers because if I want to go back and change anything, I still want to have these individual layers available to go and manipulate later if I need to go back and change anything, which I often do. So anyways, we have it all into one layer now. Let's go up to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, because that means that I can come back and tweak things later in the camera raw filter. If you don't click this, you won't be able to change anything later in this filter. So just convert it for Smart Filters first. Wait for that. It's done. And then go up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. If you go straight into the camera raw filter, I've mentioned this before, but once you hit OK, like confirm and apply it, you won't be able to go back and change any of the sliders. So as long as you convert it to smart filters first, you'll be fine. You'll be able to go back and change it if you need to. Anyways, let's jump in here and let's just see what we can do here. So this is basically like if you've ever taken a photo, even on your phone, and just pressed edit. It's basically this, but you just get a bit more tools in here. But it's, the same thing. You've got an exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, all that stuff. So it's basically just a playground to make things look better. Okay, so let's just go through one by one, and if I see something that looks like it should be adjusted, I'll adjust it. But sometimes it's cool to just mess with the slider and see, does that make it look better? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then keep it. If the answer is no, then put it back to where it was. But the more you do this, the easier it'll get, the more you'll get used to what needs to change and what doesn't. So yeah, let's just adjust this. Hold Alt to see the black point, to see what pixels are actually black, so I think that's actually fine there. Shadows could maybe, I think the shadows are probably fine too. Whites can definitely come up a bit. I'll just bring it up till it starts to clip a little bit there. And maybe the highlights, I don't think it needs to come up that much. I'll leave it at default. Contrast, maybe up a little bit. Let's turn up the clarity. That's always nice to have a bit of that. Not too much though, or you'll kind of ruin things. does kind of look cool, but it's a bit extreme, so I'm not going to go too far with that. So I don't know, plus 20-ish is going to be okay. Maybe a bit of texture. It does look pretty cool. Too much is again, just extreme and bad, but a little bit is nice. Let's add some sharpening. I love sharpening, but you know, be careful. Honestly, I probably do over sharpen it all the time, but whatever. It looks cool, I think, so I'm going to keep it there. Maybe let's go 80 or 70 or something. 100 is a bit much. And let's see, maybe a bit more saturation. Just bring out all those nice green tones that we've got in there. Vibrance, I don't think I need to touch. There's a curve in here, but like I've mentioned before, I like to use the curves afterwards, just for more control, but whatever. Color mixer, let's see if it looks good. Sometimes it looks cool to take the green slider down to like the yellows a bit, if you've got a lot of green vegetation. So I kind of like that. This is like, it's kind of like a toxic green almost when you saturate it. So I like to just drag that a little bit to the yellow, so it's not quite as toxic and like toxic waste color to look at, but it's still like nice and saturated. So a little bit of that is nice. There's the before and after. I don't think that makes that big of a difference, but you know, just do whatever looks good. Maybe a bit of split toning. So right there looks kind of cool. I'm going to just drop that back. So I'm not even looking at this color wheel when I'm adding this. I'm just looking at the image. Like normally I wouldn't choose this like purple color, but it looks kind of cool here. So I'm just going to keep it and just bring that in a little bit. It just kind of cools down the dark parts a little bit, which I kind of like. And then let's throw on some grain. Let's do like 22 or something. Maybe a little bit more. 25 is going to be okay, I think. And vignette down a little bit. Let's just see if we're moving in the right direction, which I think is fine. Maybe just move the midpoint up slightly. And let's mess with the color calibration maybe. Just see what looks cool and what doesn't. We could see if this is, this is kind of cool. Bringing those greens, again, down even further, but I don't know if I really want to do that. That's pretty cool. I like that. But I don't know if I want it that extreme, so maybe just there. And then that's kind of cool, bringing this back up, but it's kind of counteracting what we're doing, so I don't know if there's any point of that. I'm just going to move these around until I find kind of a sweet spot that seems like it makes sense. So no science or technique here. It's just like move the thing, and if it looks good, then keep it there. And I think that's good. Maybe it's a bit saturated, so let's take it, just drop that down slightly to right there. And I kind of like that. That really added some like nice blue tones into this wood here. I kind of like that, so I'm just gonna keep it. And I think we're good. So let's just hit OK. And that makes a decent difference. Let's try white background and just see if we're moving in the right direction. I think that's pretty nice. So it's maybe a little dark in these shadowy areas. So I might go back and pull the shadows up slightly. Not too much, because I like how dark it is, but it is very dark. So I might just bring that up a little bit, just to see a bit more detail in here. Let's hit OK on that, and there we go. I think that's going to be good. Let's just check it out on a black background again, just to see. I think we're good there. So it's like, it's dark, but we still get a nice amount of, we can still see all those intricate details if we look closely, that's what I want, but it's still like dark where it's like giving us nice framing. Okay, so let's do a color lookup table. So let's just click this thing, click any one of these, and that's just, again, an adjustment layer that you can pull from down here. So you just click the half circle for adjustment layers and choose color lookup here. And that's just basically a filter that gets chucked on top. Usually it's too intense if you leave it at 100. So I'll just drop it down to 30-ish and then scroll through these and just pick one that seems like it's moving us in a positive direction. So this one's pretty cool. So is it making it better? A little bit. Yes, it is. So I'm going to just keep it, but there's more options. So I might just pick, 3 or 4 that seem like they're going to be good and then just compare them and pick the best one at the end. Okay, so I went through a few more and I chose this one right here, whatever this is called. I just, threw it on 22%, makes it a bit better. So I'm going to keep it. There's the before, after with that thing. I might even go a little lower. Let's do like 15%. Just makes it slightly more interesting to look at. And then we could do one final curves if we really want to just dial this in exactly, precisely. It's, not a lot of information up here, so I might just boost that a little bit. I don't think you probably shouldn't manipulate this graph based on what the graph looks like. You should probably manipulate this graph based on what the image looks like. Like if it looks bad doing that, but the graph looks like it would look good, I don't think it really makes sense to do that. Like just trust your eyes, look at the thing. If it looks good, then do it. If it doesn't look good, then don't do it. That's more important than how the graph looks on here. Like nobody's going to see that, but everyone is going to see the thing here. So I don't know. I'm just doing whatever looks good. Just pull this up maybe. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Maybe just drop that 50%. I'm not super sure about it, but it's kind of good. So maybe even less, 25%. Just fading it a little bit, punching it up a little bit. Yeah, not a huge difference, but there's before and after with those two layers. So honestly, it'd probably make more sense to stop here and just get like 99% of the results and not spend that extra time doing this, but whatever. I think we're at a point where it's good. I think we're done. This is where I'll have to take a break and reassess things in a few minutes. And if I change anything, it's not going to be anything huge. Like I'm happy with most of how this looks. So if I do end up changing anything, it'll just be like moving a branch or something like that. Like you don't need to see me do that. It'll just be like moving a thing, re-rendering, doing all the exact same stuff I just did. So yeah, I'm going to just call it here. I guess if I do any changes, I'll put some text up on the screen. If not, here's what the final thing looks like. We did it. So yeah, if you want to download the blend file and Photoshop file, that will be available. I'll make it obvious. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to be, but I'll link it somewhere that makes sense. So yeah, I will see you in the next one then.